So, welcome. It's great to have you guys. I thought since we are doing this big sort of five-part look at the last 50 years of photography as seen through the curatorial eye of blue sky, that it might be nice to give you guys a chance to sort of lay down some oral history together. And my first question in the other ones, and we'll do it again today, is how did you discover that there was such a thing as art photography? What was your introduction to that?
Mm. Mm.
Well, I have an answer.
Okay.
I was at Manhattanville College in New York, and the bookstore had a paperback copy of On the Road and another paperback of Dorothea Lange. So that was my introduction to what photography could be.
Okay. Carl?
Yeah. Well, I was a music major in college. I was a set drummer, jazz drummer, and uh I flunked the voice test for some reason. Can you imagine that? So they wouldn't let me at that time you had to pass a voice test to be into college. And after I told the professor what I thought about that,
Oh,
I
good.
changed my major to art because there were a whole bunch of cute girls in the pottery department. I saw them in the art school, and I thought, wow, this is cool. And one thing led to another. I became a design major and really fell in love with photography through that. And I had been making pictures since I was 11 on Polaroids, but it was never, anything serious, just fun. And it's still fun. And that's kind of how I got into it. And then I transferred to a school that was emphasized fine art photography at Southern Illinois University and studied with Chuck Swedlin and Gilmore, David Gilmore, and Tom Petrillo down there. And that's how I got into it.
Okay. Bobby, what about you?
Yeah, am I on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. You'll tell us to mute if it gets too cacophonic in here. Well, I got started in photojournalism and I took a photojournalism class at the University of Georgia. So my first experience was I was showing my prints to a friend of mine's friend who was in the art department at the University of Georgia. And I was really proud of my work. I would have thought it was art, but she pointed out very clearly that since I was printing on RC paper, it was not fine art. That to be a fine artist, you had to print on fiber-based paper. She didn't even comment on the image. And then I fast forward like 5 years, and I was going to ICP, International Center of Photography, 1 year program in photojournalism. And they kind of showed me all these photographers I had never heard of before. Robert Frank, Walker Evans, Diane Arbus, Nan Golden, Larry Clark, on down the line. And I went in the basement of the library and watched some Robert Frank films at the New York City Library. And then I knew what art was then and what was the difference between art and photojournalism. Had nothing to do with fiber paper, but self-expression, touching people's souls, poetry with the camera, that stuff.
Yep. Great. Samara, what about you?
Um, Actually, I studied photography in Belgium after leaving Lebanon, where I had practiced some photography. I just finished a novel telling the story how I started photography and with multiple, let's say, stories telling conditions and places that it was possible to make photography. And but after studying photography in Belgium for 3 years, I built a portfolio, one award, Canon award or Kodak award, and the prize was going to R, les Rencontres Internationales Photography in R. So over there, I had my portfolio, and I met Christian Cojol by accident, and he has had already started Agence Vue in Paris in '86, and when he saw my portfolio in '88, summer '88 in art, he immediately reacted by saying, "You have to work for me, for my agency, and you have to come to Paris in September to discuss subjects that you can go shoot in Lebanon and come back with photography made from inside." Because at that time it wasn't easy for foreigners going to Lebanon, taking photography or making any kind of journalism, specifically in the west parts where more war was going on between parties, between Hezbollah, Amal, Shiites, and Druze. So after coming back to in 89, I was introduced to the Musée of Élysée, and suddenly they put me in a lecture of portfolios with Richard Avedon over there in Lausanne. And years before, I was just studying Richard Avedon, and I was facing Richard Avedon, who was, reading my folio and he was reading folios of many Swiss photographers, and he was very tough. And suddenly he arrived to me, and I raised a picture, the cover of Children of War, and he took his hair like that, and he said, "Wow, that's photography. That's what I'm talking about. And come here." And he was so excited, And I have pictures of that with my hair. I was 23 years old, and with Avedon saying all of that of my photography in front of those photographers, renewed photographers, in Switzerland, and the people of the Musée of Élysée, Musée of Photography with Favreau and all his team, those pioneers of photography, let's say, or photojournalism, making it an art, and where we show photojournalism in museums, not only on papers, magazines, and doing catalogs, doing books where we tell stories with photography. So I was really, so the day after you had the news over Geneva and the young Lebanese who dropped his arm, his Kalashnikov against a camera. He instead of shooting and killing, he is now making photography that is coming from the heart of the story. And I was amazed, 23 years old. You imagine all of that? And so I wasn't prepared to that, to be honest, because in school, they never teach you when you suddenly become sexual like that, how you should react, how you should protect yourself. Nothing of that was, taught to me. So I have to learn it since then. And I'm still learning, So that's how I practice this photojournalism, which is a form of art.
Denial, like none of us want to talk about this.
Okay.
The archive aspect of it, and we got around back to that. But for me, my negatives, I shot color negative film, and if I try to pull a scan off of any of those now, I got nothing. It's all faded, even though it's been locked up tight with no light, whatever. Everything archival I could think to do. It's only my digital work that's really going to survive. But in a way, I think this is very interesting. I've started doing more writing than photography lately, fiction and nonfiction, I'm forgetting the word, autobiographical, creative nonfiction. But anyway, because I did make contact sheets, which is really the only thing that I can actually access, since the negatives are all faded, I can look at those negatives and use them I look at those contact sheets and use given images prompts.
I think that
for writing fiction.
From your line. Can you mute yourself?
The photo has been taken so long ago. I don't know why I took it. I don't know. It doesn't even stand up as a photo that I would have printed. I never printed before. I can't print now. but it does suggest an idea for a story to me. So I start writing fiction, and that kind of transforms the old.
Okay. I muted everybody. So when you want to talk, just wanted to add to what
To
Samir
say
said
it,
about.
but 50 years of making visual art, I've never
Not quite sure what.
I've never been aware of having moved anybody the way.
Chris, I think it's R. Ross that has something playing in the background.
When I read.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to add to what Samir said about being at Arles and meeting Christian by accident, which is that was the birth of PhotoFest and the other festivals. Is Fred and Wendy discovering that there was this tremendous potential for photographers and folks like that who could collaborate with photographers and make things happen, and they wanted to have things like that happen not just by accident but in a more organized way. So that the value of that kind of transaction was the birth of the portfolio review. Dan, you were going to say something?
Yeah. Photography was, at least when I went to college to become a graphic arts major. I was going to be a painter. And at Pratt, which junior year, photography was a required course. And it was a course that I did not want to take at all because I'd never picked up a camera. I had no interest in photography. And I wanted to get out of it, and they wouldn't let me. So I went into photography with probably the worst attitude you could possibly have. It's like I would open up the box of paper in daylight. I would put hypo where it should have been developer. But by the first semester, I ended up getting an A, which really surprised me. And when I asked, and then one of the students says, "How come he's getting an A?" And the teacher says, "Because he asks questions." And that's really been kind of my mantra. So I decided my senior year to double major in both painting and photography. And the photography that I was gravitating to, the photography that I was being taught, was really documentary photography, the Eugene Smith type of photography, which who I met, which was really one of the highlights of my life. But I was naive in so many ways that looking back at it, there were opportunities, there were connections that I wish that I had pursued. But fast forward, senior year, I decided to make a documentary project based on one of my fellow students who was majoring in fashion. She was a paraplegic, and she was really the only paraplegic in school. And I just asked her if I could walk around and just take photographs of her. And that ended up becoming a film, just using still photography and an Oxford animation stand. That ended up winning a number of awards, student film awards. And I graduated from Pratt, and I said, okay, I will show my portfolio to Life magazine, to Look magazine. And lo and behold, I dropped off at Look magazine, and they decided to give me an 8-page spread, my first published piece.
Nice.
And I thought, hey, this is easy. Little did I realize it was over 20 years later before anything close to that, happened to me. But they assigned a writer for the story, and the story was based on Mimi, who was the paraplegic student. And she introduced me to Cornell Kappa. And since I had finished the Mimi book, I had started another self project on the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. And the reason I bumped into them was because a friend of mine from college was living in the same block as they were. And I saw them and I approached them and said, hey, can I take photographs? No. And I hung around with them for about a couple of years. And the combination of meeting Cornell Capa, who saw both my Hells Angels and my Mimi photographs, says, oh, you got to have a show. And he called Marjane Kruger, who had one of the few photo galleries in New York, and I got a show. It was, but hardly anything sold. But it was glamorous. The Hells Angels were there, it was TV coverage, but I just was too naive to know how to take advantage of it, marketing wise. But I became a commercial photographer, and the commercial photographer, occasionally I would come up with projects and just continue to shoot, my own personal stuff while the commercial work paid for it. And that's really kind of like how I progressed till I met you, Chris, at PhotoFest. And the first thing that you gravitated to, and a number of other people gravitated to, was my county fair images, Till the Cows Come Home, which became a book. And again, there were people at PhotoFest who really complimented me on it, and I just did not know how to follow through. But anyway, fast forward, this is kind of really how I've progressed. Work my own personal projects, hope to find a gallery that will exhibit it, and thank goodness Blue Sky has done my two major shows, so far. And I'm really grateful for that, especially in terms of my last exhibition on Headstrong, which they let me do what I wanted, and the size of the prints, the videos, the installations, it was freedom. It supported it, and that was really just very, very gratifying. That's it.
Dan said, I want to have a big pile of gravel in the middle of the room. We said, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nigel,
Well, that had to do, yeah.
Yeah, that's related to the work.
Yeah.
Nigel, what about you? How did you discover?
Yeah, hi, Chris.
Thing
Yeah, I mean, it's a strange question because in a way, I just wanted to get away from it. Because, as a very young kid, I was taking pictures with a sort of little snappy Agfa Isomatic. And I remember deciding that I was going to take a picture of a sunrise. And I got up the next morning and I took that picture. And I took two pictures and I thought that was twice as much as I should use. That particular picture, which was not a really interesting picture, but it was just a sun on top of water, I sold 10 years later for £500 on a double page to illustrate something. So that was I could say that was my first commercial picture shot at the age of 14. But I mean, I love taking pictures, and I went away, I shot pictures. I was not a very good photographer at all. I came back and I went to Sheffield, where Roger Bush and Ken Phillip were running a documentary photography course. And they had all sorts of people coming through who influenced us. So there was John Blakemore, there was Paul Hill, there was Chris Killett, there was Debbie Baker, there was Brian Griffin. We had all these books that we had in our library, which really influenced me. Of course, there was Eugene Smith, there was Frank, there was Baltz, there was Miselas, her work in Honduras, there was Jerry Ulsman. So I was quite aware of art photography at a very early age, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do. So I moved much more into documentary and photojournalism, and together with a fellow photographer on the same course, Bill Stevenson, we both ended up by working for the press. We both ended up by doing TV stills. We both ended up by doing long-term documentary projects. And, you know, I did a book on the miners' strike in 1983. I went to South Africa that was not 84, 85. So before that, I went to South Africa for about 8 months, and I did a big documentary project. And I worked with squatters, and I worked with resistance, and I worked with communities who were being victimized by the Thatcher government and all that sort of stuff. That was the thing that interested me. So I didn't, you know, head in the direction of art until I won a prize at UNEP, and that was the bigger summit thing, and I got a third prize together with a photographer I didn't know called Sebastião Salgado. And I went to Arles with a whole group of people from 10/8, because I was in Birmingham and I was related to 10/8, and I had all these friends like Derek Bishton and John Reardon and Mark Seeley and that lot. And they said, oh, there is this exhibition festival we should all go to, which is in Arles. And they all went without telling me, and they arrived on the Wednesday or the Thursday, and I realized that they'd gone, and I flew there, and I arrived on the Sunday morning, which of course was the last day of the professional week. So I'd missed the whole week. So I had no idea how it worked. I walked into the Place du Forum, and I had my folio underneath my arm, and somebody said to me, go to Hotel Forum and you may find some interesting people next to the pool. And I walked in, and there were two very well-known French photo editors, Michel Philippot and Claudine Mongeau. Nigel, it's no use to you at all. Go to Visa pour l'Image. And later in that year, I went to Visa pour l'Image, and then my whole career, to an extent, at least my international career, was built by being at Visa pour l'Image. But I didn't listen to their advice. I also went to Arles. And by going to Arles, I met people like Tina Schellhorn and Wolfgang Serborn and all these other people who I became great friends with. And I met loads. I mean, Arles is a fantastic place, and it's full of documentary photography, not necessarily the magazine press work that you get at Visa pour l'Image, but this marvelous mixture of documentary, art, photography. And everybody was going to PhotoFest, of course. So PhotoFest was in my mind. And at some stage, I did go to PhotoFest, and I did show a work that I'd been doing in the early 2000s, which was the Smoky Mountain work, which eventually I won critical mass, and that was then at Lucida and so forth and so forth. And I have to say that the Smoky Mountain work is my most exhibited work in the festival scene. It's been at PhotoFest in Houston, and it's aired again this year in the retrospective. It was taken by one of the curators for the Daejeon Korea festival, and I was in the headline group with Martin Parr for that. Very nice to have my name in all these catalogs and have my sets of pictures. The funny thing is that particular reportage, that particular documentary work that I had paid for all myself, I have never made a dime on it. I've had loads and loads of branding, lots of good publicity, lots of great shows. Everybody seems to know it. But it's the only work that I never sold to a magazine. It was used in a lot of magazines for the, European photography, British Journal photography, all these sort of magazines that want to show my work. And it actually fantastic. So it's great. It gets me known. But, I've been a dedicated photojournalist and a dedicated documentary photographer all my life. And I've spent most of that time taking pictures of unsellable pictures, really, in the art market, because my pictures of Smoky Mountain rubbish dump are nasty, a lot of them. They depict nasty situations, smelly, horrible, impoverished. It's not the sort of stuff that is wanted by the art market. And the work that I'd done on meat, the work that I did on Mad Cows, I was told by Stern magazine, they said to me, great picture, it was our worst selling magazine of the year. So, so it's like I think I have a sort of reputation for producing gritty, horrible pictures in horrible situations. And often I've gone into I've done 30 years work with Roma Gypsies. I should have a book in the next couple of years. I've had a book already with Zach Sud. But it's not an area which is publicly what do we say? It's not the sort of work that people want to see all the time. A lot of people have all sorts of racist ideas about gypsies and things like that. So most of my work is about, showing the truth, showing the exodus of war, showing what it's like being a refugee, showing the Holocaust, showing all these sort of things in a documentary immersed way, and with a lot of positive, funny images within it, which hopefully tells the truth about a community that's very wary and being marginalized all the time. And I gravitate to those sort of things. I don't know.
Thanks. Paul, what about you? How did you discover there was such a thing as art photography?
I'll be brief and mention just two things. For me, I grew up in a household with a father who was a very passionate amateur photographer. He dropped out of high school the day he turned 16, so he didn't come from an art school background or anything like that. And seeing great prints of his he made in the dark room downstairs in the basement, and a very tattered copy of Family of Men, which is actually in the bookcase, embedded behind me. But so I always knew a photograph could be more interesting than being barely utilitarian, But that seed lay dormant for a while, because then I went from Boston to Portland, Oregon to go to college, Reed College, right? And there's no photography classes there, barely had an art department. And and so I labored through that. But when I graduated, I took an evening class, I think it was at the Portland Museum, with Terry Totemeyer, right, who was part of the early days at Blue Sky. And he invited me to be part of this volunteer, tribe of people at Blue Sky. And I sat the gallery on Saturdays, for I think a while. And that's when I realized was in a milieu of people who really behaved like artists, right? So I loved making pictures as a hobby. But then I was with all of you guys who were very artistic, I would say. I mean, there was a lot of infrared flash photography, and it was really playful and fun, and it was such a great thing to be part of. And that kind of helped me see how you can be in the world that way, right? So however things have gone since then, I guess I would say the thing I feel best about is turning that hobby into a way of life. And Blue Sky was really helpful for figuring that out. So.
And Justina, you had your hand up for a while, did you?
Yeah, sure. So my grandfather was a photographer. He probably did a lot of the same things that a lot of the folks who spoke at the beginning mentioned: photojournalism, commercial work. Unfortunately, he died 6 months before I was born. So I never really knew his work or what he did until I got to college. My family came here as refugees in 1980. And while my mother took me to museums all the time, I went to the Hermitage as a child and saw a lot of paintings. And I actually had friends who were artists. The idea of being an artist was just not something that is really feasible for an individual whose mother came here with like 2 suitcases and 2 children. So I actually went to art school by accident. I wanted to be a veterinarian, and my high school guidance counselor wouldn't write letters of recommendation for me to go to a science program because we were immigrants, and they just felt that we really were, even though both my parents have PhDs, immigrants are not people who go to college. So I went to art school by kind of accident default, and took photography because I really love the science aspect of it. There's chemistry, there's physics, there's all kinds of things in it. And I just happened to have an incredible teacher, Alida Fish, who was an RIT grad, who was doing a lot of experimental work at that time. She was cutting pieces out and creating collages and rephotographing them. Also doing a lot of work with chemistry and experimental printing. And that just really, it just really struck me, the kind of ability to experiment and ask questions and investigate and come up with new techniques. And so I then went on to get my master's degree in photography, but primarily because I wanted to be in an environment surrounded with other creative people who were doing a lot of really deep thinking and process work. And I wanted to be in academia. And that's what I went on to do, was teach photography and art history for 25 years. And that enabled me to then also make work. And I met Chris at Photo Fest in the early 2000s, which I don't even know how I found out about it, to be honest. And I went at that time, I think it was 2004, and it was still very innocent. It was in this hotel across from the Houston Fine Arts Museum. It was small. All the curators and us, we just hung out by the pool all day talking, very informal and very friendly, and kind of built up an international community that way, and continued to make work, primarily because I think Alida was the one who showed me that it's possible for a woman to do this, and to kind of do all the stuff. And she really didn't care for commercial work or for this other stuff. She really kind of encouraged me to pursue the fine art stuff, the stuff where you don't make any money. And so I'm forever grateful to her. She's my second mother, and also to Chris, who's given me 2 solo shows and has just made wonderful opportunities for me along the way. So yeah, I think probably if it wasn't fine art photography, it wouldn't have been anything for me. I think that's where my passion was been from the get-go, even though I probably didn't realize it until I actually fell into it.
Yeah. Craig Hickman, who's one of the Blue Sky co-founders, was teaching, and he had a student who was a very successful wildlife photographer. And Craig said to him at the first class, I want to talk to you briefly after class, so stick around for a minute. And the guy said, okay. And then after class, Craig said to him, you're doing something that people are excited by and they want and they buy them. And I'm going to teach you how to do something that nobody wants and nobody's going to buy them. Is that okay with you? Guy said, yeah, that's what I want. And he said, okay. I just wanted to be clear about that from the beginning. One of the themes that I heard a lot of you folks who were talking about had to do, and Justina just now, sort of about how do you find sort of community? And for Justina, it was like, okay, I want to be in this academic setting where there's other people pursuing this interesting stuff and various other answers. But for those of you who we haven't heard from, how did you sort of find and build community around yourself? Samara. Oh, you're muted.
Okay. Actually, because of the subject that I start in the beginning, which is showing, the Arab world, and starting that at a time where there was a big mistake, and misunderstanding of this Arab culture, mixing it with Islam. And so the community had to be built, and nothing was made concerning the history of Arab photography, because many people in Paris or wherever I went, when I started photography at the end of 80s, the answer was Arabs don't do photography, or Muslims don't do photography. It's prohibited, and they don't have images of themselves. So I have to make a huge work to prove that, Arab culture have nothing to do with Islam. Islam is a religion, and Arabic it's a culture. It's poetry, it's literature, it's sciences. When you imagine that the letters and the figures that we use in Western world were made in Lebanon, were made in the Arab world. Phoenicians, they initiated, those commerce routes and ports and all of that. So there was a big, and it's still going on actually, and there is a war still going on also with this misunderstanding and this, let's say, image that the Arab by themselves have given to the others without being in the knowledge that they have to act to change the way people look at them. So I had this mission start in the beginning, in the end of 80s. And when I met the people in the Musée of Élysée, they were, let's say, eager to find somebody like me, because they were in the situation, those lefties and the anarchists in Europe in the 70s and fighting for causes around the world that, capitalism were making a point over there. And suddenly meeting somebody like me and a young guy, full of courage and going and taking risks and even speaking out things that nobody wanted to speak about it because everybody was afraid. So the community started building around, this point, which is, okay, we are Arabs, we are from this culture. This culture is the culture that is practiced all around the Western world, and monotheism. It's all those three religions that they come from the same region where this Arabic language started and this Arabic culture started. So there is a problem. Why people are still fighting? Why people still killing themselves until today? And the answer, sadly, is because of money, because of interest, because of economy, because of petrol. Nothing to do with humans. When you put humans together, they agree on everything. And they party, they sing, they do beautiful things. But once you have those, financial people and those people in politics and diplomacy, they enter the field, the people start fighting and killing each other for no reason for them, because nothing will change for them. They only die. They live in a misery. But those who manipulate all of that, they are getting more and more rich, and that's continue, And so it was even by building this community around Arab images, by founding the foundation in Beirut, Arab Image Foundation, and doing all those works, even building a center of photography in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh, which was a sort of, project that's impossible, mission impossible. I did it. So, but with all of that, nothing has changed. So I wonder if building a community or building, a force of people and energies that they want to change, they want to create this change, they want that things go to a peaceful way of living, but they are not successful. And until now, there isn't any sign that someday in my life that it will change. So I'm a little bit disappointed, but at the same time, this disappointment of building this community gave me other, let's say, basis to start now writing. As I said at the beginning, I finished writing a novel. It's the second one. The first one tells, those Druze community who are 1 million around all the world. 1 million, the Druze community. So I told the story, and they have a secret, this community related to monotheism, where they expose, let's say, religious behavior and politics and all what crimes they did against humanity to dominate humans. And the second one is in the pipeline now. I finished the manuscript. And it continued the story and finding a way to unify people. Because at the beginning, I was defending this idea of, let's say, the Arab identity. We have to show it in a way that everybody can accept it and see themselves in it. And once it's done, now we are all concerned, not only Arabs or Americans or whatever identity, humanity is concerned, because if we continue like that, what will remain of humanity around this world? And what is the goal of all what they are doing, or arts or photography or whatever, films or those big novels or those what is the aim if we can't just live in peace and let people express themselves without fighting? So that's now my goal is to go into this community, which is more the Unitarianism, which is it's more unifying humanity around one and only one, let's say, goal, which is finding peace. Because it's going. I'm 62 today, and I'm really, I wonder if I will live one day of my life in a peaceful mind.
Well, hopefully. Colleen, you had your hand up.
Thanks. Hi. Community. That's a great thing to bring up, Chris. And hello to everybody. Can you hear me okay?
You're a little quiet.
Okay, I'm outside, so I'm at this thing. But you can hear me though?
Yes.
So I find that community has largely happened because of teaching. So maybe I should take my headphone. I don't know. I feel like it's not coming through because I can tell it's not green. But
No, we can hear you.
Is it okay? Should
Yeah,
I keep
we can
talking?
hear you.
Okay.
Go for it.
Just give me a hands up if I'm in an odd situation. But teaching brought me a community at Columbia College in Chicago. I started teaching after going to grad school, and that was an accident, but it brought me a full community of people. And I think going to when I went to Review Santa Fe after 10 years of, I had graduated and I kept working on a body of work. And I think a lot of times graduate school students now have to have this pressure to become a superstar immediately. And there's this weird pressure that, this was in like 2008. I I started teaching in 99, and that brought me a lot of colleagues, and then I meet students, and then I show up to their openings, and then that's how everything happened, is like through word of mouth. A colleague of mine said, apply to Review Santa Fe, so I did that, and that's how I got my first book published with Radius, because it's showing up to the festival, showing up to the reviews, applying to things, and I think that's what's given me my friends and my colleagues. And so I think that I owe a lot to photography, and that's how Chris, I mean, I don't even know how. It's just like one thing leads to another by just showing up for other people. And then I remember Zemi emailed me, and that's how I was able to have my show at Blue Sky in 2014. So, and I met Cheryl St. Onge, who had her show at the same time that I did, and now we're really good friends. So everything is, it feels like a lot of things lead back to Blue Sky. So I'm really grateful for that, and for having a chance to teach and having to follow up with my students. I just think it's really, painters don't have review review events. It's really community building to go to these portfolio festivals. Oh my God, there's a bee. And so thanks. That's where I have found its community, is from teaching and from showing up to other people's shows. Oh, and I'm also in a critique group. I know Melissa Pinney was just on the Zoom. She had to go, but there's, be participating in different critique groups. Someone will start it. Like, we had a critique group that ended up being a lot of karaoke in Chicago, and that was really fun. So it really is sort of the sustenance of work that, you find out what other people are doing, and it's inspiring to be in a community of other photographers.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, for the record, Colleen, I first saw your work in 20 by 200 and went, who is this great photographer?
Oh,
This is fantastic. And then
yes.
started looking for you and following your work and stuff. Yeah, I have to say that I know Portland has a very sort of special community and sort of feeling like there's this sort of milieu of, hey, let's get together and make something happen. I was brought up that art and life are team sports. And I think that's very much the aesthetic here, our way of being. And there's probably 10 different groups of photographers in Portland who get together, like the group that Colleen is talking about, to look at each other's work. And Bobby started a darkroom community up in St. John's in North Portland, and there's I think the value of that, and I've been sort of heartbroken sometimes. I was talking to a photographer from Detroit who we showed, and I said to her, "Oh, there's so many good photographers in Detroit. We've shown a bunch of them," and she said, "I don't know any photographers in Detroit," and it just broke my heart. It's like, no, you have to know them. And I remember at the first photo fest that I went to, which was '88, there were a bunch of photographers from San Francisco. And at the end of the review, they sort of said, "Oh, well, see you in 2 years." And then they sort of pulled themselves together and said, "Wait a minute, we all live in San Francisco." And they started becoming a community and becoming a group that helped each other. Two of them married each other. So Photo Fest has been responsible for at least one wedding that I know of. But Nigel, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of community of photographers, by moving to Paris, which I did in the sort of early '90s after going to the festivals, I became part of a very wide community of photographers there. But I would say, in general terms, when it comes to my work, the communities that I work with became my community. They became my family, and I immersed myself within them, so that when I worked with the miners, I gave the miners and the miners' wives the editorial control over the book, which meant that when we did interviews and when we did pictures, all the pictures would go up in the strike center, and we would bring everybody in to look at them and discuss what should be in the book. So we made a collective book. We followed a little bit the path trod by Charlie Parker, who was an old Radio 4 guy who wanted to show people's history, and that's what we wanted to do. So, we produced what they wanted, and at the end, the exhibition and the book belonged to them, and the miners' wives and the striking miners would take the exhibition around the country in a van, and they would show it all over the country, and it was all laminated, a little bit like the Camera Work Gallery. I don't know if you know the old Camera Work, London Camera Work Gallery did these laminated exhibitions, and this is what they did. And in a right-wing borough where the mayor refused to put it in the town hall, 10 or 20 miners would stand outside holding a panel each. I never saw it because we didn't have mobile phones in those days, but it was fantastic. So they took it around, and they took it around as their show, and they sold books which made money for victimized miners and that sort of thing. And what I'm told by those miners, because I'm still in contact with them, or at least the few who are left, is that they look at the book every single day of their lives. So the book was part of the community. It was about the community, and it went to the community, and it stayed with them. And the same, I worked in a similar way with indigenous peoples that I visited in Borneo, and I visited them for 30 years. And what I've done, 20 years later from visiting them, first of all, in the late 80s, I went back with all the prints laminated singly, and I went back with clothes pegs and fishing line, and then I put exhibitions inside their communities in the jungle and let them see it and be part of it, so that so they are my community in a way. And so when I'm producing work in that way, it's a community, the people that I'm photographing who are they can be the audience, even though it's for the rest of the world. And that type of thing took place with squatters and with resistance and with gypsies. And I keep bringing that. I think it's very important. I mean, I do show in exhibitions, in galleries, I show it in well-known festivals, but I take all the work that I can back into the communities where it was made, and I show it in a way that they can see it within their own community so that they can relate to it and talk about it, and it becomes their own work. It becomes part of them because, the chief of the village who didn't have any pictures before, he can now take them and show them to the children and say, look, this is your father and this is your mother. They were protesting against deforestation and we have to do that. So, but I think nowadays I have loads of communities with photographers through the festivals that I've been to, through where I've lived in Birmingham or lived in Paris. And I mean, Arles, I think for me is the most important place to go. Photo London, photo Paris, all this sort of thing. But Arles is just fantastic. I meet all the photographers from all the different places and we chat. And, it's just marvelous, really. We support each other in lots of different ways, I have a lovely, I suppose it's a type of love, people like Wendy Waitress, who's always supported me. And I've cooked for her a few times. And yeah, it's just there's some type of love, commitment. I don't know. There's something that goes beyond photography.
No, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the sort of craziest things about art is that museums tend to tell this story of like, oh, there's a lone genius and they've painted a masterpiece or photographed a masterpiece and we have it. But in fact, the way art is made is this real community thing, a community of your fellow artists, a community that you're photographing, that you're working with, and the each of these stories that we've heard, and we've had somebody say, oh yes, and this person, this teacher or this person stepped up and became this important person to help me do something that was meaningful. And I think to have the story that it's just about the lone individual cuts their ear off and makes a masterpiece, it's just the wrong story. It's really a team sport, I think, and I wish people could understand art making that way, and photography in particular, where I mean every picture that you make of somebody is a collaboration with your subject. I mean, it's never a lone genius like that model. It just isn't. So what about some of you folks that we haven't heard from? What have you heard today that you want to respond to or think about? Brad, you're muted. You're muted, Brad. There you go.
Am I
Yeah.
It works? Okay.
Yeah.
So I wanted to comment about a couple of things. First of all, the sense of community. We do much better together than we do alone. When we're left to our own devices, it's very selfish and it doesn't look on the whole. And I think that what's happened for me in photography has been that. So kind of going way back to your first question, the way I started when I started photography, I was this troubled youth who didn't want to be a part of anything. I pretty much was I was just troubled. And I took photography as an easy class. And I was also really interested in music. So I started photographing. I was a rock and roll photographer at like 14, 15. And I was making all these pictures and had this access, and it was a lot of fun. And then my high school teacher, who was really supportive of me, kind of changed my life. He took us to an exhibition of minor whites in 1973. And when I saw this, like my whole world just turned upside down. And I decided at that point that I was going to be an artist. I wanted to be a visual poet because these pictures that he was making were better than doing any kind of psychedelics that I was doing, or it was better than any feeling I had just seeing it. And I decided that that's what I wanted to do. So I continued doing this and photographed these things, water, and I bought a view camera, and I was able to actually become understand a bit of myself. And it was really the first thing, I guess selfishly, photography was the first thing I ever really had any sense of control in my life. And I continued this, and I pretty much kept to myself and made these pictures of the landscape that there was no sense of people. But the thing was that I got to love people, and I realized that we're everywhere, that everywhere that we go. And so I guess through my work, I kind of seeked out community, and I then maybe early on, maybe the 2000 it might have been, and I was showing my work to people. I was ambitious and all that. But in about 1998 or 2000, I went to PhotoFest, and I met a bunch of these people that you had said, San Francisco people and a bunch of different people, and I just and they sort of took me into their fold, and I realized that you can have everything in life you want when you help others, and they were doing that with me. And so my sense of community changed from being about me, and it became more about everything else. And so PhotoFest, which was the festival that I'm talking about, I went to, and it's the first time I met you, Chris, was there. And a lot of the people I met, 25, 26 years ago, are still really, really close friends of mine. And the reason was because we didn't expect anything. We weren't trying to accomplish anything for ourselves. It was more of a communal kind of give to each other and kind of feeding off each other. And it reminded me of when I go to exhibitions, like when I saw the Duchamp exhibit, or when I study Man Ray or Cortege or Picasso, or the Beatles or Bob Dylan. These people didn't live in a bubble. What they did was they had a group that they were able to kind of feed off of each other and to kind of contribute to each other, and one thing would riff off of another. And I suppose that's what I've been doing for the last 50 years, is pretty much making pictures of what's around me and the communities that can survive. And going back to what Smear was saying about living in peace, and that, I think that we do. I mean, I think we're much better when we are together, and when a group of people have a similar vision, anything can be accomplished. But when you're sitting there and you're thinking about only your vision, it just doesn't happen, and there's no payout. And for me, what I've learned about the world and what I've learned about my place in the world, and is all because of photography. I mean, photography has saved my life numerous times for different things, from health to going and being in trouble and that. And so for me, the way I give back is to kind of bring some of these ideas that I have, or questions that I have, and try and have other people have these questions. So and having the exhibition at Blue Sky was a really, it really affirmed a lot about the work I was doing. And I just, I'm so grateful for the community that I have as an artist. And I'm so grateful for the ability to make the pictures, that it is part of my life, and that everything evolves around my practice, my making work. And it's just made me a better human being. And it's about as much as I can really go into without getting kind of gushy. But this has been I could never give back to what it's given me. And the other thing I wanted to point out is like I listen to my photographs and I listen to the pictures I make, and I see like my pictures are here and I'm here. And so what happens is as I continue to make pictures, it shows me the possibility of being a better human being. And I don't think that I'll ever reach here. And if I do, I'll be dead, I think, because there'll be no reason to continue. Um, but it shows me the possibilities of humans. And the work I've been doing for the last 20 plus years has been pretty much focused on our impact on the environment. Um, and and I just find that people say, "Oh, we're destroying the earth and we're destroying this," but really, what the earth is going to survive and life is going to continue, but humanity may not. And so, I think that this, for me, my work has actually shown me how to kind of let go of those, like petty kind of thoughts that I might have, petty human thoughts, and look larger at the larger picture. And I'm just very grateful for the community and for the ability to do the work that I do. And I'm really lucky because I've gotten some positive feedback about it. But at the same time, if I didn't get any positive feedback, the pictures themselves have been what I've needed, and I continue to do what I do for that reason.
Yeah.
It's not for a payout, it's not for exhibitions. It's basically because what I see in the world, I have so much hope because of making pictures and because of the experiences that I've had from doing that.
Right.
So I think maybe that's how I'll leave it. But thank you for letting me speak.
Sure, sure. Yeah, one of the things you said I think is really kind of important, that your photographs know more than you do. I sometimes liken the camera to like a flashlight that illuminates something that without the flashlight you could only see dimly, and I think there's this constant um, evolution of our work where we're just trying to catch up intellectually with what we're sort of intuitively knowing what the camera is teaching us, what our photography is teaching us. And yes, to listen to your pictures is probably the most important thing that you can do as an artist. John, you've had your hand up. You're muted. You're muted. There you go.
Well, it's slow. I couldn't find the link. I missed the beginning of this. I was sure I had it on my calendar,
You're
and I
good.
went and it wasn't. So anyway, uh, community. Yeah, I mean, I think you're actually, Chris, you're one of these people. I mean, who I really, truly, I think you really live the idea of community. I mean, look, you brought us all together, and I mean, and Tina Shellhorn, and I mean, I figure like these are two of the people I know who like, I don't know who loves photography more than the two of you. I think, and elevates photographers, and I mean, and community. I mean, personally speaking, so that the work that you showed, um, of mine was about, mostly the pictures were from this brain injury rehab place where I lived after I was attacked. I was out photographing and in Sacramento, and I was working at the newspaper there at the time, and I didn't even really remember coming to this place, but about 6 months after I left, I started photographing just to try and understand what was going on with me. I just understood I had to learn how to walk again. My whole experience of the world was very different, and violence is violence is a really isolating thing. And I can tell you from personal experiences, brain injuries can also be very isolating. So I was very, I would just go out and photograph at this place. I wasn't really socializing with people. I would go out 2 or 3 times a week back to this place where I lived and started photographing. And, it was a couple of years. I finally showed the work to some friends who then passed it, sort of showed it to other people. And then I think while the jury was out in the trial of the attempted murder trial of the leader of my attackers, I got an email from Lightwork asking, if I'd like to do a residency. And, I didn't really have anything. I couldn't imagine my life until like after this trial. It's just completely consuming. And that was sort of the beginning. And then Visa pour l'Image, I mean, Nigel mentioned that. I met people there. Jean-Francois Leroy projected the work there. And it was crazy. Like after I had just moved to New York. I had been wanting to move to New York. I was done with California after the attack. I just didn't want to live there anymore. And I thought, when am I going to go to New York finally if I don't go? So I did. And I met people in Perpignan who became my friends, some of them still most of them still in New York. And I'm really I'm actually more interested in their photography even than my own. I'm always, I learned so much from seeing that work. And I mean, I don't want to go on forever about it, but I think that the idea of community is really important for us as photographers, but it's also, we're also people and citizens. And I think it's a very solitary way of making art so often, not always, but quite often. And it's just us and us with our camera, and then maybe the people we're photographing. Yes, that's a collaboration if we're photographing people. But again, as citizens, I think the people that want to control us are the people who are trying very hard to isolate us from each other. And I think social media I keep track of a lot of friends and see their work and that sort of thing. But, it's a double-edged sword because it also can isolate us from each other in a virtual conversation isn't really quite the same. I mean, this is actually, as close as we're probably going to get for today, all living in different places. But yeah, I think we need to reach out to each other and talk about our work and talk about other photographers we know, talk about that work and encourage and share ideas. So there.
No, that's great. Yeah, and I mean, we've kind of at Blue Sky, we have on our YouTube channel, we have 200 artist talks now archived there roughly, and we've done, we've done now 4 of the 5 decade by decade shows. So we're really trying to lay down as much as possible sort of the grounds for communication and for sharing with each other the discoveries that you guys have made visually, artistically, socially. and we're the microphone, you guys are the singers. So but we're trying to do our best. Andy.
Yeah, and on community, PhotoFest was really the place which got me into doing fine art photography. And as a kid, I went to MoMA in New York and saw some of the great exhibitions, and then I became a a magazine photographer, but I always had aspired to do something that might be considered art. And I went there after I had a show locally in San Francisco, and my first time I went to Photo Fest, I showed work that didn't go over well, kind of got crushed. But what I saw was the work that got lifted up, and there was a guy named Dave Anderson who sort of came out of nowhere and did this great project, and I became friends with him and helped him out, got him a couple of photo jobs for magazines, and then I came around, found something that I thought might be interesting. It was about these gallery desks in Chelsea. I started to shoot in color, so I changed my work and had signed up for Photo Fest. And then this guy, Dave Anderson, said, hey, I showed him the work. Oh, this is great. Let me connect you with so-and-so. And I showed it to a few people in New York. They were interested. Then it got online, and all of a sudden I got a call from a big gallery in New York and got a show. And Photo Fest was coming up, and I thought, well, wow, I better come up. What if I come up with something different? And I decided I would go to Russia. I had these old pictures that I shot there in the 80s, and maybe I'd come up with something before and after type series. It wasn't working out. I went to the museum to look at the art, and then I found these older women who were guarding the art, and that became this little series. I had about 7 pictures that I brought to Photo Fest that year, and that was when I met you, and you looked at them and you said, these are great. I'll finish this series. I'll do a show for you. So that was just kind of an amazing support that here I hadn't even finished the series, and you were going to offer me this show. And it's like, wow. I mean, that's, that was something that was going to motivate me to go back there and try to do it. And so now this guy, Dave Anderson, comes to me and says, you got to meet this Russian guy. He's about to leave in 10 minutes. He's about to go out the door. You got to see this guy. Quick, get him. And it was this guy, Yevgeny Berezhner, and I showed him the work of the Russians, and he's like, well, there are 4 great art museums in Russia. Yes, there's the Hermitage, which are the pictures that I had done, but there's the Russian State Museum. You got to come to Moscow, the Tretyakov Gallery, and the Pushkin Museum. I will help you. And so through Photo Fest, through this community, through helping out Dave Anderson, the timing of it all, meeting you, I was motivated to go, and I went back to Russia and completed the series. And then I got Photo Lucida, picked it as a book, and that became a series that's gone on. Of course, now things have changed so much you can't really. I had a show that was in Russia. I went back, brought books to all the women that were in the pictures, but now you can't even go there, and it's how things have really changed. But anyway, my point about community and also luck and timing, but the fact that Blue Sky was willing to show it, and I had a really nice show there, and that Photo Lucida was able to support the book and get that book out there, and it's shown around the world because of that. Yeah, I mean, that's just invaluable, and I just hope that that's something that can continue, and being able to meet with other photographers and have that kind of sense of camaraderie where you can help somebody out, and where you're not expecting them to do anything for you, but they come back and help you out like that. It's really something that makes it work when you're all by yourself in your own places, and it's kind of hard to do that. So yeah, just want to thank you all for being there. I see the Jamie and Brad, and I've watched them, and John too, all have success. So thank you.
Yeah, let me just say one thing, which is that it was shown around the world because it's really good work, and that's true for all of you guys. It's like you're sort of saying, I understand the point that I hear you guys saying, that yes, these people help my work get out into the world and all this stuff. But I mean, it's our job to find really good work, and you're the people who did it. You're doing the good work. So give your work the credit too, not just the people who help it. But let me kind of
can I just say thank you, and I've got to go.
Okay.
Really, thank you very much, Chris. It's good to see all of you, John Trotter especially, and lots of other of you guys who I know so well. And yes, Tina Shellhorn has been one of the great helpers to a lot of us. Chris has as well, and lots of other people have. Let's hope that we can keep this community going, because this is a community here that we're creating, and we should get together again.
Sounds good.
See you all in real life, I hope, next time.
Super. Yeah, so let me switch gears a little bit and sort of say this is the time period of this fourth decade show is a time period where photography is kind of in lightning fashion moving from being analog to digital. And I'm curious for you guys, how has that transition affected you, affected your way of working, your photography? Samara, you have your hand up.
Actually, I didn't make this transition with digital photography. I didn't buy, a real camera, a digital camera, because for me, digital photography is not anymore photography. You have to call it, image, because the process of photography should go through the light, and this light have to impress this, film. Otherwise, there isn't photography for me. So I used my phone, my iPhone or my Sony Xperia, and it became my camera that I have all time in my pockets. And now I'm building the third part of my trilogy about the Arabs, and mainly a big chapter of this book, the third volume, third part of this trilogy, is made with my phone, because I stopped photographing people. I'm photographing more and more, trees, animals, nature. And because, I'm sort of disappointed by human being. So I prefer to go to nature, to go to those, energies that are, whatever you do, they are positive and they are constructive. In nature, the energies are always constructive, even when they destruct. They destruct for a reason to reconstruct. And you see it on each year, nature go die and resuscitate and come back to life. So I used my phone, and the pictures that I sent you from my current work that I'm doing, that are made with my phone, and I made a very huge print going from this small, cap sensor on my phone because if it's digital. So digital, you can, work with it digitally to make it bigger, to give it the grain that you want, like in a film. So it's like of cheating. Doing, digital photography for me, it's not real photography. It's cheating. It's more arts, let's say. It's image. It's creating images that we express ourselves with it, but not the same way with photography. And once you'll see the book and the new work that I'm preparing, hopefully it will go out in next year. You'll see a big difference between the way that I used to photograph with my Leica or black and white films and the digital colored images that I made with my smartphone or my iPhone. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it's different, and it's not the same feeling. And I'm very concerned by conservation of those digital images, because the only way that I find to conserve those images is to make prints or to print it in books, because we can never trust digital things that they will remain in the future. With any accident with those magnetic fields, we lose everything. We don't have any more electricity. So all those traces that are made, or left behind, they are only digital. I have a big doubt about it. It's same with the currency, digital currency, and so I'm not very, let's say, uh, comfortable with those digital cameras. They are too big, zooms and all of that, and I didn't adopt it. But using an iPhone or a smartphone is finally we can get the same result. Specifically when we start cheating with those files and working with it to make it, I made a print of 3 meters by 4 meters, and I exhibited on a Hotel Dieu over here in Tonnerre, old building, and it stayed in time 5 years outside in rain and all of that. They didn't move, but there was a fire, and fire eat those large prints. But at the same time, it gave me the chance, to be more creative and working more those files digitally and making things different than what I used to do with my black and white photography. So, yeah.
Thanks, Carl.
Oh, yeah, hi. Well, it's funny you should ask that because actually the show that you guys did at Blue Sky, the Tavern League, was started on Ektachrome with the Hasselblad, and in the middle of that project, I shifted to a digital back on the Hasselblad because it was becoming impossible in Northwest Wisconsin to find a professional lab to process Ektachrome. And even though I'm close to Minneapolis, the labs were closing, the good labs. So I decided to shoot digitally, and I don't approach it any differently. I mean, I just see it instead of a silver halide, we're tagging, RGB sensors. It doesn't matter to me whether I'm tagging, a photosensitive piece of film or a photosensitive electronic sensor. And so I still approach it the exact same way, whether I was using a digital camera or not. So half the exhibit that you guys at Blue Sky exhibited was actually shot on film, Ektachrome, and half was shot with the digital sensor. And I would wonder if anyone to tell the difference between the prints, which ones were shot on film and which were shot on the sensor. You really can't tell the difference. So I embrace the digital world, and I don't embrace the iPhone. Sorry, Samir, but I do embrace the digital world, and I use it the same way as you would a Leica or you would a Hasselblad. So I think it's empowering. One other thing, it's also more affordable. I mean, it allows younger people to make photographs without spending thousands of dollars on film and processing. And I think it empowers a lot of photographers, and it gives them opportunities.
Great. Bobby.
Hey, well, Chris mentioned earlier that I opened up an analog community photo center here in Portland in the last couple of years. So, but I'll keep this brief. I mean, when digital came about, when digital came about, there were a lot of people I was amongst that were like sticking their head in the sand and didn't want to do it. And I ran out and got a digital camera, and the project sort of evolved out of having that camera. And so I think it's like any art form, you have a different tool and it opens other doors for you. I do feel torn for a few reasons, and kind of coinciding with digital, of course, is the internet and social media and Instagram and things like that. And so this idea of, well, where does the image reside if it's not printed? I shot a prom here in Portland when I first moved here, and I had this great idea. I would just post a gallery of the images online, and then they would order all these prints. And out of 99 students, I got one order. And I asked somebody, I said, didn't anybody want any of those pictures? And they said, oh, we got them. We just grabbed them off your thumbnails off your website. And, they had no desire to print a picture out and put it on their wall or put it in a photo album. And so I scratch my head a lot now, sort of with this proliferation. If I'm on Instagram a lot, which I'm trying not to be, it's like, it does feel like things are shifting some. I'm not going to be one of these, the sky is falling and photography is dying, but it sort of makes me wonder what the role of photography is. We're in a world where everybody's a photographer. As a photojournalist, I mean, from Rodney King or even, from O.J. Simpson, I mean, it was not anymore the photojournalist that was like recording things. And that's accelerated so much more now that like a lot of the important news events are being shot by just spectators or participants. And I'm not saying this is a good or a bad thing either. It's just I'm scratching my head a lot is what I'd love to hear what other people think about that. As Chris, you just scratched your head. So
You inspired me. Dan.
The thing I love about digital photography is it covers your ass in so many ways that film cannot do. As a commercial photographer, I had to buy a digital camera. When digital first came out, most of the art directors I was dealing with did not think that digital would ever equal film. But as we know, it has exceeded what film is able to do. And with my last show at Blue Sky, I had prints that were 48 inches tall. Could I have done it with my Hasselblad film? Yes, but it would not have been as sharp as what my digital camera was able to capture. It frees me. Again, I'm going back to the film days when you're shooting chrome or you're shooting film, and you have to be no more than a half a stop off, or otherwise you're not going to get a really good negative. The fact that I can be 3 stops off and still manipulate the image and make it really look good just satisfies me to no end. It surprises me what the iPhone can do in terms of in places where my exposure would have to be probably a half a second at 1.4 and come up and fill up people's face with lighting that I could never capture with film. So it's this kind of love-hate relationship that I have with it because all my projects had been done with my Hasselblad and film. And my last full-time project, which was Headstrong, I took my camera to do both digital and Hasselblad, and it just did not work with the Hasselblad. So I ended up going into digital, and in some respect, it's been a godsend. You're right, in terms of the money you save from film and processing. Is just enables you to shoot more. It affords you the ability to shoot more. And I'm just going to make one other point that goes back a number of years. I remember being in one photography auction at Swan, and there were a number of digital images there. And I asked the curator at Swan, well, it's digital. What does that mean? Well, people aren't quite sure whether it's something that's viable or not yet. That was about maybe 15 years ago. But as you can see, everybody's a photographer now. And that's a bummer. That's it.
Paul. Oh, you're muted.
2005 to 2015 is the period we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And that is the time in which, digital established itself as the way to make pictures. And in schools all over the country, people were ripping out darkrooms, and you had this idea that digital is better than analog, and analog is dead. And and now, at Columbia, at least, where I just retired from, all the analog classes are by far the most popular classes. They're filled with seniors because they get to enroll first. Is it a romantic thing or not? I mean, I always thought that this digital versus analog was kind of a false dichotomy because I don't care. I don't care if the picture is well made and interesting and compelling for all kinds of reasons. It's a great picture, and I don't care what camera it comes out of, right? So we lived with that false dichotomy for a while, I think. I think the real issue isn't whether it was produced by this lens-based camera that has a film in the back of it or some kind of light sensor chip. The real issue, I think, is what it has, what the digital revolution has. Let me just backtrack. Great things about analog is something that always people think is the downside of analog. It's slow. You know, people talk about how it allows you to make tons of pictures really quickly. That's a bad thing. I think photographers need to slow down. They need to pay closer attention. They need to think about what's in front of them, and they need to think about whether what they're doing is costly or consequential, so that's still an advantage of analog. And there's advantages of digital too, especially in low light. So whatever, different cameras for different kind of advantages. But the real problem or the real issue is what digital has facilitated. And that's like Instagram. And Instagram leads to a kind of unsubtle imagery. And people think what good photography is from Instagram is often very graphic with a specific range of subject matter that will get the most kind of likes. We know what those pictures are. So I love Instagram, but it is a very narrow way of thinking about pictures. And the other thing, which you will deal with in the next the next installment is AI. Without the digital revolution, we don't have AI. And the consequences on photography are AI are things that we are rapidly, beginning to live with. And in 3 years, you asked that question, Chris, who knows what photography is at that point? And and that becomes another advantage, I think, of analog is that actually that's off topic because you can always scan something and turn it into a digital image. But that's the question we're going to be wrestling with right now. This digital versus analog. I don't care about AI. I do. And I'll just leave it for there and let that marinate.
Yeah, I'll say one thing that I've noticed. We had the Blue Sky Exhibition Committee is a mixture of younger and older photographers, and I've noticed that the younger people don't so much. It's much more about the subject matter and how important is the subject matter, how ethically was the picture made, and they don't see the sort of visual compositional, let me say, music of the picture. It's
right.
If there's a picture of a trans person, it's good. But what about this picture of a trans person that's a better made picture, And that there's sort of a tone deafness, I feel, that I think probably does come from Instagram. That's why I'm responding to you. Instagram, let's make everything be vertical. It's going to flow by. If you look up on your phone for a second to do so or answer a phone call, come back, and the picture you were looking at is now 5,000 pages back, So that's partly why we've done the 1,000 web pages, is to make something that will sit there longer and that you can ruminate on more. But yes, I think I think Paul is right. I think there's been a change in the subject matter and the way people photograph that comes from that. So, Andy.
Right. I mean, can I just follow up on that real quick,
Yeah.
Chris? Because this is a conversation I had with my wife last night, who's a painter. It's like, yes, the subject matter gets simpler, and it's about identification. Name the subject, and the content comes from the way it's framed intellectually or conceptually, right? And the picture just becomes a service to that idea, because that Instagram role does not lead to a subtle kind of imagery, that is complicated, that is subtle in terms of color even, or in composition. And that's what this generation has to kind of unlearn, I think, I don't know. But thank you.
Andy.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that when it was 2005, we were talking 2005, 2015, 2006 was when I realized that I could use the digital camera got good enough that you had the full frame that you can make these prints. And that was when I realized that I could shoot in color and handhold with a 35 millimeter camera and do the subject matter, which was these three series that you showed, were all done with a digital camera. And I don't think I could have done them in color with a film camera. And when I first came out with the first series, I made these big prints, and people were saying, "Oh, that must be done with a large format camera. You had to have done it." And it's like, well, no. The only way I think I could have done it, I wouldn't have gone with a large format camera. I went into these galleries in Chelsea. They would have told me to get out of here. You know, what are you doing? But because I had this handheld camera, and then I could make it use the properties of a large format camera and have the finished product be this sharp picture that looked like it must have been done with a large camera. Also, then the Russian work, I had to move through quickly when I got permission. There's no way I could have made that in color because you're using, it was the indoor light, mixed light situations. You can fix the color in the post-production with Photoshop. And that was just a big step. And I was very resistant to switching. I grew up with doing black and white, developing my own film. And I was very resistant to using it, but that it really did change how I shot this. And I don't think these series that I did would have been able to be done if I was trying to do them with film. I would have thought about doing something else. There's no way I could have pulled it off. So there is that. And now I think then after 2015, like you were saying, that now everybody's got the phone and everybody's a photographer, and that's just a whole nother question as to where photography is going. And yeah, now with AI, I'm not sure what the question's going to be, going forward, but I'll leave that for other people to discuss. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to whether you're shooting analog or digitally, there's other changes too. I mean, the internet has done more than give us Instagram. It's also given us MagCloud, where Blue Sky has been able to do 191 books in the last 10 years, which, we certainly could never have afforded even one of them. We've put up this 1,000 web pages so that to make a place for young photographers to come and soak in the last 50 years of accomplishment that photographers have done. And I think, when we started the gallery, everything was analog, and if people didn't walk into the room, they didn't see the show. And we did posters for every show, so we got the images out nationally, but you got one image out nationally. Now, when I saw, I mean, I was saying to Colleen Blum, I was saying, I saw one of your pictures in 20 by 200, which is certainly something that would not have existed if not us being in a digital photography world. And then I could go to her website. I could look things up. I mean, eventually she got a book, which I could have looked at, but I was already attuned to her work through the internet and through a sort of a conversation one can have that way. And, we talk about community in terms of people physically getting together, but it's also a community that's created by looking at work by somebody who you've never met and you're never going to meet. Anyway, Samir, you have your hand up.
Yeah, actually, for me, to illustrate analog photography to digital photography, going from this to this, we started by saying one photo's worth 1,000 words with analog photography. And now we can say with digital photography, 1,000 pictures worth one word. You go to internet, you go to Instagram, you have thousands of images to express nothing, not even one word. Back in time, when you take this picture in Vietnam, this little girl running and the napalm, it changed the world. One picture changed the world. Today you have millions of pictures and nothing is changing at all. And with AI, we are going to be in a sort of illusion, continuous illusion, because, I don't know if you have practiced it with Gork or with ChatGTP or whatever. I don't know if the editors, they will have a place anymore, because you give any text to those online, and they edit it, they make it something wonderful. And when they get used to you and they know your work, you feed them with what you written before, and etc. They can do marvelous things for you. And I didn't try it with photography because I don't want. It's something that I'm not interested at all, to create those artificial images. But I'm tempted, to give to this IE all those archive images and ask it to build a film with it, a movie or whatever. And it could be possible. But so it's very dangerous, because you can change the purpose of anything with fraction of seconds, and you can put online, thousands. What I hated with the digital photography and digital cameras, that you don't have a limit. It's mean you have one subject and you can push the button and make thousands of images and spend hours editing your thousands of images to get one of it. So back in time, you had 36, pushes that you can do, and you have to calculate it because you have events going in front of you. And if you arrive at the 36 and the event start there, you are, you lost your picture. So you have to take it easy and to take your time. Don't rush. Make your first picture, wait and see what will happen. Make the second one, wait the 5 minutes, change your point of view. So that was something exciting and creative. With digital images, I see, those professionals push the button and move with it. And then you go to editing and you can take 5 images, mix it together to make a perfect one. So for me, there's something is lost, in this creativity. For sure, for commercial purposes, it's wonderful. And because I use it for commercial purposes and for those consulting things that I did for European Community, and it's wonderful because instead of doing a report that takes you hours to write it, you just do a movie with your phone or with your small digital camera, and you put it as a report, and so they are satisfied that you have shown them what you have done as activity. Before you had to go with writing reports for hours, so telling them that what you did and which activity you did. And now, using those digital cameras, small ones, I use it to make reports, to make you go on the field, you have an activity, you film everything, you edit a small movie of 10 minutes, and you submit it as a report with a small paragraph saying the activity took place at the watch the movie. And it was amazing for that. But point of view creativity, I have a doubt. I have a big doubt, even with those IE and things like that. Creativity is dying.
So let me say 2 things about that. One is you all know, I think, that Joel Sternfeld exhausted Renegade Elephant photograph from American Prospects. And he talks about kind of stumbling upon the scene. And he said, I found what I believed would be a safe spot. As Ty and his failed seductress passed, I took a picture. Then Ty, the elephant, hot, traumatized, tranquilized, and exhausted, collapsed in the road. The boy got out a bucket of water and tossed it. As he did so, I photographed again. What happened next, I can only describe. The elephant and all the handlers who had been up all night went to sleep in the road. Only the sheriff and I were awake, but I was out of film. He only took 2 sheets of film with him. That was his practice. But I will say the thing that Brad kind of talked about earlier about your art being ahead of what you understand, that AI is for illustrating what you already have in your head. And it gives up I mean, I agree with you, Samara. It gives up the creativity of being able to have your work know more than you and you learn from it. That you photograph the if you think about Andy's project with the Guardians, I mean, it's about seeing what's actually there. If you sort of imagine out of your head and illustrate that, you wouldn't have that sort of I want to say forensic, although there's no crime involved. You wouldn't have that observational thing of the real world that is sort of the lifeblood of photography, I think. I mean, for me anyway, photography is about all you guys sort of showing me something that I haven't noticed, haven't seen, and you're telling me if I pay attention, I can see the world the way that you do. I can see what you're seeing, and I don't think AI is going to provide that. Brad.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know how to do I'm a Luddite when it comes to Zoom.
Okay,
I
you're good.
don't know how to raise my hand. So,
I can see you.
but I wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, um, I'm really interested in possibility and, you know, analog and digital and AI and all that stuff, whether I agree with it or use it or not, it still opens the door. And opening the door has been what my goal in life has been, is to open doors. I can say that my photographic um path from analog to digital, uh, it hasn't changed. I still photograph the same way. I still make like a really great day for me. If I make 3 pictures or 4 pictures in a day, I've done a ton of work. So I come from a view camera. That's what I've done. When I went to digital, it was that way. And like what Carl was saying, if there's one project I did, which was mostly analog and some digital, and no one can tell the difference which ones were analog, which ones were digital, because I see what I see, and I'm going to see that way. And the other thing I wanted to say is for me, what I love so much about being a photographic artist is I get to show other people what I see. I am in wonder, in awe of the world. And so when I make a picture, it's almost like, look at what I'm looking at. This is so unreal. This is so affirmative. And so I've always used photography as a means of affirmation, of living, of yes, yes, yes. And I remember, early on, I saw Cartier-Bresson did a slide presentation, which was called The Decisive Moment. And he was describing what it was to be a photographer, that sometimes you're this, sometimes it's a kiss, sometimes you're a psychoanalyst, sometimes it's this. It's always yes, yes, yes. And the one thing that AI can do is that it can go ahead and it can take what you already know and make it into something else. And I'm not a fan of it, but I also understand that it is going to change, just like when I first came into digital, I wasn't a fan of it either. But you use the tools for your own needs. And really, where you are as an artist or a photographer or someone that's observing the world is it's coming from here. It's yes, yes, yes. And that's what you're making pictures of. You're sharing your experience and raising questions for others to have. And the whole sense of making pictures and community, they're one and the same to me. It's all about sharing. And the positive thing about Instagram and Facebook, which again, I'm not a big subscriber, but it allows other people to express themselves, and maybe one or two of them are going to find what's important, something that they can actually add to the language that we already know. And we might learn something. So my advice, and in listening to Samir, because when you were saying this, it seemed really negative to me. So my advice is like just keep an open mind. It's, you can learn from anything. And the time that people or humans are at their best is when we're at our worst. So we have to find those places in order to move forward. And so that's that's how I look at it. And I appreciate everyone else's view. I may agree or disagree. It's just different to me. And if I can take whatever you say or he says or she says or they say, and I can keep it in my back pocket, I know from my experience of being around, and I'm a pretty young guy. Um, I figure I've got another 60 years ahead. If I can keep it in my pocket every once in a while, those little words of wisdom that I heard when I was 19 or when I was like 20 or whatever, they pop up and I go, oh my God, that's what this means. And so this journey is, we are so fortunate to be able to have this tool of the camera, whether it's digital or not, or iPhone or analog. We're just so lucky. And if we, again, listen and keep an open mind, I think that the world just becomes a better place for you, for me, and for everyone around us. So I'll get off my soapbox now. Thank you.
No, that's great. We're bumping up against our 2 hours, and half the group has already left. So, but I think that's a good place to sort of to tie it up. I think we heard from the beginning, you guys talking about how your ability to make the powerful artwork that you've made came from seeing work by, and Cartier-Bresson, you just name checked, by all these other photographers who you're building on their discoveries. And yes, Brad, definitely the photographers coming after are going to be building on what you guys have discovered, what you guys have seen and learned how to see and taught us how to see. And I think, yeah, it's different tools have different possibilities. There's that wonderful quote from Arbus from the introduction of the monograph where she says, you have something you want to do, your equipment has something it wants to do, and you make a compromise, you end up with a collaboration with your equipment. So who knows what the future will bring, but I want to say that I'm very happy that the future of photography is building on what you guys have accomplished, and I'm happy to have Blue Sky share in your reflected glory of the fantastic work you've done. I'm happy that we were smart enough to show it.
Thank you.
And I think the next.
If you allow me, Chris, I would like to answer Brad.
Okay.
On something he said that I'm negative with my point of view or with my mind or my state of mind is negative. Negative is not bad. Negative is the base of our, creativity, our photography tool. Being a
make
negative
prints from negatives.
you can process a positive by starting from the negative, which means that negative is done. You put it elsewhere and you use the positive. But I can tell you about the story of my negatives. I have 50,000 negatives over there. They tell a story that nobody wants to tell. And to be honest, I use all those tools, digital, IE, whatever. I learned everything because being a photographer, you need to learn all those, professions to use, even being, accountant, being a business manager, being a CEO, being whatever. You have a profession in this life, maybe not a surgeon, but in a certain point, yes, you can be a doctor, a medical doctor. So you have to learn all of that because when you travel in the desert and you find yourself dying and nobody around you can do whatever to help you stay alive, you have to be your proper doctor and you have to treat yourself to keep to stay alive because you have those negatives that you have to move with you out of this desert to tell a story. This story is very important, not only for you, because, you know, you will die like everybody in this earth. But it's important for those people and their culture.
Yeah.
Because if you don't save them by doing pictures of them, and those pictures somehow, it's the only thing that remain with time, because we are erasing them, not only physically, but also culture, remains of, you know, old buildings, churches, mosques, whatever, schools, hospitals. We are erasing everything. And the only thing that I still have is my negatives on Palmyre, for example. Palmyre has been erased.
Yeah.
You know, this fantastic city that existed more than 1,000 years ago have been erased by those savages that they use what? Weapons. And who do weapons? Who fabricate weapons? You? Me? No. The ones they fabricate AI and cameras and digital and whatever satellites, they're the same. You know, so I'm open to technology. I'm completely open to technology. Even if you want to nuclear weapon, why not? It's technology, no? It might change the world. Let's be positive on it.
Okay.
But by starting by a negative film. Well, I was so happy to see you, Chris.
Yes, it
I
was
miss you.
great.
And
Great
you
to have
can
you guys here.
you can't imagine how you are in my mind sometimes. I'm discussing with you because the most fast way that we have in this universe is the thought. It's more faster than light. So from time to time, I'm in connection with you, and I'm sure you can feel it.
That's great. That's great. Well, it's been
Others now I will be in connection with you because I saw you. We spoke, and hopefully we'll see each other physically. But you know, thoughts are something miraculous.
Yeah.
It's the thing that can go from a part of this universe to come back to the same point with no lapse of time.
Well, that's great, and it's been great connecting with you guys, and yes, hopefully we continue to connect and inspire.
And thank you for making this possible. It was
pleasure.
really enlightening. I really appreciate that.
Hoping the monkey would talk at some point, but
Okay.
maybe next
Okay.
one.
Maybe
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
See you
Bye-bye.
guys. Bye. Take care.
Bye.